Hey, what's up guys? Thanks for tuning back in. Today, we're gonna see how many times we can shock ourselves. No, I'm just kidding. I'm actually gonna do a little bit of electrical work and I'm gonna show you guys how to add a light to an existing run of electrical on a circuit. I've got a darker space over here in this kind of shop work area and I wanna go ahead and add some more lighting so it's just easier to see and I'm not moving shop lights around and getting more shadows. So, pretty simple. I'm gonna show you how to run your NM cable. I'm going to tell you what NM cable is, the different types of cable, how to use wire nuts, and the whole thing. So without further ado, let's get started.
Yo, listen. Came to America, real youngster. Learned from the OGs, true gangsters. Mistakes I made never gave real answers. Then the problems came along, disaster. Had strap, but what came after? Saw my brothers ghosts like Casper plowing through my.
All right, so first things first, we got to know what we're working with, which is electricity. Electricity can be dangerous, and to avoid being shocked, although I was joking before, I don't want to be shocked. I've done that enough in my lifetime, don't need any more of that. We got to make sure that the circuit we're working on does not have power to it. How do you do that? Well, you turn off power from the breaker, from the panel in the breaker box, to stop all power from running into the circuit we're working on. Now, in this case, there's only one circuit in this area, and that's right here, okay? It's being fed in from the panel to this outlet, all right? It's receptacle. So when we shut off power to the breaker, it will not feed this outlet, which then go ahead and feeds all the lighting that's in this room, okay? So there's two ways to do that. We gotta make sure we turn off the breaker, and then I always tell people, once the breaker's turned off, you wanna make sure you turn the right breaker off, okay? So how do you do that? You come back down to the circuit that you're working on and you test it with one of these, okay? This is a voltage tester. Klein makes a really good one. A lot of them can be kind of finicky, so I'll leave a description a link in the description, sorry. So you guys have a couple different options to choose from with voltage testers. Do not rely 100% on this, okay? You gotta make sure and understand. See how this is tripping out right now and the battery's low? See, I can actually get that to turn red. Green means good, okay? Green means go, just like a stoplight. Red means pay attention, we've got power running to it. So I can actually test it two ways. I can stick it right in here. See? Right into my hot slot right here. It's a smaller one. It's telling me there's power running to it right now. Don't lick my finger and stick it on it, right? The other way we have Romex or NN cable exposed, I can put it right here. See, it's telling me I got power running to it, okay? Now, like I said, it's not 100% foolproof, so how do we actually test if there's power? If this thing is tripping out or it's not being as accurate as it should be, easiest way is to run something with power to it, okay? I usually, especially when I'm working by myself, plug in a radio, because when I go out to the breaker and the radio's on, it's a bad station, and I turn it up, I can hear it. So when I flip that breaker, no more power running to the radio. That's telling me I'm good to work, okay? So once I shut off the power, then I can go ahead and start my work on the circuit that we're going to be doing. In this case, we're going to be adding a light down the line from a light that's already in this room. So let's go over to that light and start work. Okay, real quick before we get started, we're gonna run through a quick setup of what you're gonna need for materials and tools to handle this project of adding a light to an existing circuit. So the first thing we have to understand is what type of wire should we be using for this project? Well, it depends on how many amps are coming off the breaker. You have 15 amp breakers, you have 20 amp breakers, you have 30, 40, sometimes 50, and based on the amp on the breaker will determine what type or what gauge of wire, AWG, which is American Wire Gauge is what it stands for, AWG wire you're going to need. Within those branches, there's also 2-wire and 3-wire, sometimes even more depending on what you're using, but for the simple fact of understanding residential electrical and keeping it as simple as possible for this project, today I am adding the light to a 15 amp breaker. So 15 amp breaker, the amps are rated on a chart, okay? And that tells you directly what gauge wire you should be using. So if you pull up the American Wire Gauge charting, you can search it on the internet, it will tell you what gauge you should be using for your project. Okay, so that being said, there's different colors of wire, and you guys can see this. Okay, and not only are they different colors of wire, but there's also a rating on each wire. Now let me flip this over so you can read it right side up. Okay, so if you see on here, right there, it says 14.3. Okay, so what does that mean? 14.3 wire means that it's got 2 hot leads and a neutral lead within the wiring system. Okay, this wiring system, this sheath system right here is 14.2 wire. That's what I'm actually going to be applying today. So using those different kinds of wires is determined by what you're trying to accomplish with your project. You've heard of 3-way switches. So for example, on a 14.3 wire on a 15 amp breaker, you would use a 3-way, on a 3-way switch, you'd use 14.3 wire because you're running a traveler or a hot leg to a different switch. We're not going to get into all that today. You just need to make sure, for the most part, you are matching the color that you're running to the color that you're going to add to the circuit, all right? So in this case, again, we're on a 15 amp breaker. That requires us to use 14 gauge wire. I have a 14.2 wire here, okay? And although we're gonna be adding to a light that is running a 14.3 wire in, that's okay, because we're only going to wire nut up the neutral and the hot that we need, so the white and the black that we're gonna need to run down the line to add this light, okay? Again, knowing that rating system, a lot of these wires are also color coded. 14 gauge wire generally is white. 12 gauge wire generally is yellow. 10 gauge wire is generally orange, and it kind of goes down the line. But the easiest way to figure it out, other than looking at the breaker, because sometimes the wrong gauge wire is used on that breaker, is looking at the color, and then also not just the color, but looking at the label on the wire itself. Okay, so that may be a little confusing, but if you pull up the American Wire Gauge chart, it'll tell you what gauge wire to use on that breaker. Okay, so you go to the breaker, you look at what it says on there. It says 15, 20, 30, whatever it says, then go back to the chart and you know what you're going to use. Okay, doing it for many, many years, I know exactly what I should be using. It's all stuck in here, my chart's in my head. Okay, moving on from that wire, we also are going to need wire nuts. Okay, and the thing with the wire nuts, you're going to notice, you can get these at Home Depot or anywhere, it'll tell you all the different gauges of wire you can use this on, rating from 22 all the way up to 10, okay? It's important that you grab the right size of wire nuts. I see a lot of, when we get into remodel projects, a lot of homeowners, or even sometimes another contractor has come in and done work, and you're finding a wire nut that's too small for the application that's being used, okay? So most of the time, you're gonna be using that type of wire nut because you're gonna be using somewhere in that system of gauge wire for your project, okay? You're also gonna need staples. If you're gonna work behind walls, you gotta be able to staple per code. We need to staple the non-metallic cable to a framing member, so it's not just flopping around all over the place, which can cause problems when people are putting in pictures in walls or other remodel. If there's wire loose that's not hidden behind the framing structure itself, it can be punctured, which can cause problems. Minor end, you short the circuit and there's no power. If you pierce that non-metallic cable, there's no power running to that breaker or that part of the line on that home run. Worst case scenario, you spark it, you shock yourself depending on what type of breaker's on and it's not protected, someone can get hurt. So we have to make sure that we staple our wire, and code requires us to staple it every 8 inches along the line, okay? From the box itself all the way down every single 8 inches until we get to the next box or the breaker, whatever is landing on, okay? So you wanna use your staples, all right? And then again, it'll tell you right here which size you're gonna need, and these are pretty generic sizes. So you can grab those at any big box store, Depot, Lowe's, whatever, okay? You're also gonna need, like we talked about before, voltage tester, all right? We're gonna need our wire cutters, okay? Make sure you get some pretty big ones, okay? So you can actually cut through different sizes of wire. And then we're gonna need our wire strippers, because we're gonna need to expose, no, that's not a bad thing. We're gonna need to expose the wire itself, okay? We need to expose the copper ends to get a good connection in our junction of wherever we're tying this wire in, all right? So again, this is a 14-2 wire, okay? And I'll show you what the wire strippers do. We got our hot, which is our black. We've got our white, which is our neutral. And behind the sheathing is our ground, okay? And that's already gonna come exposed. These two we have to expose when we're doing a connection with our wire nuts, all right? These right here are the wire strippers, and I don't know if you'll be able to see this or not, but on these wire strippers, it has a bunch of numbers, and yeah, these are kind of old. And all those numbers are reflecting the different sizes or different gauges of wire, and it'll tell you which little slot to put that in order to strip it, okay? So the trick behind that is just figuring out, one, by now you know which gauge wire you're using. We're in this case 14, okay? I find the 14 on the slot, and I put it in there, and then I squeeze down all the way. And so that, see that function, I'll hold it this way, is gonna grab the wire, and then it's gonna pull the actual insulation off the wire to expose that copper, all right? So I'll do that real quick so you guys can see how that works, and then we're gonna get started doing our layout and then going ahead and making our connections and running down the line, and I'll show you step by step how to do that. Okay, so here we are. I'm gonna adjust this camera just a little bit. So again, we're going 14 gauge wire, okay? So I find the 14 right here in the strippers, okay? These are, got little sharp teeth in here, right? Then I want to move it back about 5/8 to 3/4 of an inch. That's all I need of the copper exposed to make my connections. And then I'm going to set it in there nice and tight, and I'm going to grip. All I'm going to do is squeeze the wire strippers, and it's going to do its job for me. It's going to pull down and grip it, and it's going to pull that sheathing right off, okay? Just like this. See that? Now I've exposed the copper that I need to make my connection. I'm gonna do the same thing with my neutral, okay? So I find that 14, put it right in there, okay? And I'm exposed, now I've exposed my neutral. Now I'm ready to go to make my connections, okay? So that's how those wire strippers work. We're gonna go ahead and put that into the field and put it in action. Okay, one last material to use is the light box itself. This is called a nail-on box, okay? It's got nails that I'm gonna nail into framing structure. Now these are used for what's called new work. So stuff that's exposed, we don't have drywall, we're not going behind walls or ceilings in order to install this. I can actually just use a nail-on box. These things have little notches or adjustable flanges on them here to tell me exactly where to set this box in relation to what type of drywall we're putting in. Generally drywall is gonna be 1/2 inch thick, okay? So that notch is set at 1/2 inch, and it's gonna grab either on the framing itself or on the ceiling, that 1/2 inch mark. In this case, these are actually flush fit type of deal. So I'm gonna have this completely flush to the edge of my framing, okay? And that'll give me my 1/2 inch depth. If I was ever to finish this space, it would be set just proud enough of the framing where when we put drywall on and cut around it, the drywall will be nice and flush to the edge here to install a light, all right? We don't have to worry about down here right now. This is a shop space, but I'm going to go ahead and set it the same way I would if I was gonna do a finished space. So I'm gonna go ahead and pick my spot up in the ceiling here, nail it up, which is your first step, and then we're gonna go back to the original spot where we're gonna wire in from and run our line across. So that's next. It's gonna be a step-by-step process. All right, as you can see, it's pretty dark down here. Obviously, I've turned off the power, so I have no light down here except for my shop light. Make sure you kind of plan ahead for that kind of stuff too. So if you know you're turning off power and you're gonna lose lighting for a little while, that you have sort of backup lighting and be able to see what you're doing in any case. So what I'm gonna do next is I'm gonna take off this faceplate for where the existing light was to expose this box. I'm gonna drop in my 14-2 and we're gonna run it across to the other box.
You can see the world the way it really is. Always.
All right, quick little tip. So a lot of these light fixtures will come with their wiring, so to speak, on the back of the light is going to have like an aluminum look, and it's basically like a broom end, right? So it's like a broom you'd use to sweep with. It's stranded wire. Here's the thing, with the stranded wire going onto the hard copper here, you actually don't want to twist this on with your wire cutters, okay? Just like I was doing the other light, I was twisting those things tight in a clockwise formation and then putting my wire nut on there. You actually do not want to twist these together. You just want to use the wire nuts for the connection, because you can actually shred this stranded wire part right here. And actually, if that shreds, then you're going to lose your connection and your light's not going to work. It's not going to connect for power. So just keep that in mind. Also, it comes with, a lot of times they'll come with these small wire nuts. I don't like them. I'm still going to use my rated wire nut, because I'm still connecting this copper, this 14 gauge copper, to the stranded wire. It's going to have a better connection, okay? So just keep those two things in mind. You pull it out of the box and it's got that like aluminum, silver look, and it looks like that broom end, that stranded wire. Don't put these together and twist them before you put your wire nut on there. Just slide them on and twist the wire nut tight, okay? Just keep that in mind. I'll show you how to do that as I continue to put this light up. Okay, final test is going to be flipping the switch. And there it is. Let there be light. So now I've got more work light down here in this area. I'm probably gonna add 1 or 2 more lights depending on how I kind of finish the setup in this spot. But this light's actually putting off some pretty good luminaires. So I'm pretty happy with what we got. That's how you do it. That's how you add a light to a run. If you got any questions, please leave them in the comments below. You can also hit me up on Instagram at Shane Bailey Builder. You can DM me with a question, comment, whatever you want. Okay, that's it for this video. If this is your first time here, go ahead and hit the subscribe button and the notification bell so you can continue to get more of these videos coming at you. I appreciate everybody for watching. Make sure you hit that thumbs up on the way out if you haven't done that. It really helps me out, and as we continue to grow. So more electrical to come. I've got some other videos in the works. Just keep an eye out for those. Happy holidays to everybody. Be safe, be kind, and check me out on Instagram. I got some other small videos, time-lapse stuff that's coming as well. So we're going to keep cranking them out. If you want a hat, we're starting to sell them. So leave a comment below if you want one, or on Instagram at Shane Bailey Builder, and we can get you one sent out. Until next time, guys, I'm going to get back to work now that I got more light. Later.
Yo, listen. Came to America, real youngster, learn from the OGs, true gangsters. Mistakes I made never gave real answers. Then the problems came along, disaster. Had strap, but what came after? Saw my brothers ghosts like Casper, plowing through my mind like a tractor. What's the reason of life? No laughter. Staying in my lane and the money came faster. Putting food on the table to platter. Anyone in my way was shattered. Tech those mind like a kung fu master. Rebuke the demons. Josh answers. Ain't no faking in me, I ain't an actor. Flip the page like this new chapter. Join the cult, learn economy stanza. I'm after the banks with a banker, cause I bang on the banks hereafter. Pushing ops to the edge, cliffhanger. Never invest your money with anger. Stranger's secret, keep getting strange.